Welcome back. This is the Tom Sumner program on Flint's News Talk 1470 WFNT, and as it is Monday, we're starting out the week, as we always do, live at Alexander J's, featuring Armchair Politics coming up in just a little bit. This hour, my guest is the chairperson for the Genesee County Republican Party. His name is Randall Thompson, and he joins me now here at our oblong round table here at Alexander J's. Randall, it's nice to meet you in person and get a chance to visit a little bit. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. I really enjoy being here.
A couple of weeks ago, I had Henry Hatter on the show. He's African-American Republican, been around for decades, for those who know him. And we were talking a little bit about the anniversary of Martin Luther King's speech. And I asked him back in the 60s and 70s, for him, which made him feel more like a minority, being African-American or being Republican in Genesee County. And we had a little laugh about it, but Genesee County has a history of being almost completely saturated by the Democratic Party. And Republicans held very few of the local offices. In the last gubernatorial election, it went 60-40 statewide for the governor. In Genesee, it went 60-40 against. How much of a challenge does that make for you stepping in as the head of the party locally?
Sure. No, and I appreciate the question.
You got to feel like the ultimate underdog.
You do, but you don't. Part of the problem is the perception, exactly what you're noting. I think the reality is much different. If you look over the last election cycles, we actually did a vote analysis of vote totals within Genesee County. And so if you look back to the 2006 Secretary of State race, for example, Terry Lynn Land was 10,000 votes away from Carmela Sabal. Carmela Sabal got 84,000 votes. Secretary of State Land got 74,000. If you go to Rick Snyder in 2010, when he won, he was only 10,000 down, or 6,000 down. It was 68,000 to 62,000. So if you look at the historical vote totals of the county as a whole, what you see is you find an average that the Democrats usually get roughly about 102,000 votes, and the Republicans get about 63,000 votes on average, if you look back over the last 8 years. So that, now I'm looking at a window of 40,000 votes. If you realize that, you have a historical pattern of voting between people, they believe that they have a citizenship duty to vote, you'll have roughly the same folks that will vote time and time again, and you'll have, obviously, a new constituency. But so if I'm looking at a constituency of 40,000 votes, that means I only need to really change 20,000 minds.
For a dead heat.
For a dead heat. Right. I need to get to 50% plus one. When you think of the county being saturated by the Democratic Party, that seems like an overwhelming, daunting task. When you actually look at the numbers and you get down to it, now out of a county of 419,000 people, my universe that I have to really focus on is 20,000 minds. That's what I've got to do. But it's much more manageable.
But that's of the people that are actually participating in voting.
That's correct.
If you take into consideration that in some races, like the one we're going to be talking about here in a moment, the 50th State House special election in November.
49th, yeah.
49th, I'm sorry, 49th. Jim Ananich's old seat.
Sure.
Let's see who's up for that. We've got on the Republican side Don Pfeiffer.
Don Pfeiffer.
Yeah, against Democrat Phil Phelps. And when you take a race like that, this being a special election, there was a special primary for it, and it was like 6% of the people who could have voted. So I guess what I'm saying is there room to attack that 40,000 from outside existing voters, or do you think the people that don't participate are so disenfranchised that the signing up people or getting out to vote kinds of efforts are not worth the time.
No, it's absolutely worth the time and effort. By focusing, it's almost a two-pattern approach where you have to look at those that choose not to participate in the democratic process for whatever reason they may have, to inspire them enough to get out and vote, even though they haven't traditionally done so. But then also to be able to actively court the current general populace that does exercise their right to vote. It's a very powerful action that people take every 2 years. And I think it's my job to get out there, as in many cases as possible, to say, hey, let's not talk about R's and D's. Let's take away the letter behind the party, so to speak, the party affiliation, and let's go issue by issue. Because what we find, if we do polling, that, your traditional UAW voter or your traditional Democrat within Genesee County is not a off-the-wall charts liberal. Are they pro-gun? Yes. Are they pro-life? Yes.
Well, certainly.
If you're looking by issue, a lot of your conservative Democrats or your traditional Democrats in Genesee County actually line up more from a both social and economic policy plank with the Republican Party. But I think that, we just haven't done a very good job outside of, or inside the confines of Genesee County of being able to bridge that gap and kind of focus their attention on where we do agree.
This past weekend, the Republican Leadership Conference up in Mackinac, there were factions of the party, the Tea Party in particular, looking ahead to the Republican convention at a possible challenge for Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley. Of course, polling in the wake of the meeting is showing that Calley's still holding his numbers very, very well. But that constant wrangling within the party, does that hurt chances for victories in places where it's already tough to get victories like Genesee County?
Yeah, no, if anything, I think it only helps us because it's almost a reinvigoration of your grassroots. You have folks out there that maybe have not participated in the grassroots effort or have not been activists. They've done their voting and, they've talked to their neighbors or their friends, but outside of that, they haven't really gone out and knocked on doors. They haven't gone out and made phone calls. They haven't come to a victory center or anything like that. They haven't tried to raise money or help out a candidate in particular. And what you have is with the Tea Party, it's almost reinvigorated the grassroots movement because you have now people that have to go out and court votes. You have to go out and get precinct delegates. You have to be able to participate in the process, not just on your own volition, but inspire others to take action as well. And, Wes Nakagiri is out there that is making a challenge to Lieutenant Governor Calley. There's speculation that Todd Courser or someone else may try and challenge the lieutenant governor. But as you've seen, from the straw poll this weekend, he's enjoying a wide range of support across the grassroots.
Well, and then there was a letter to Governor Snyder as well by Tea Party activists saying that they were, virtually sitting out.
Yeah, you've got a lot of folks that are really upset with the Medicaid expansion vote. These are the same folks, though, myself included, who were extremely appreciative for all their efforts with Right to Work back in December. You have, if you go issue by issue, you're going to have places where you're going to disagree with members of your party. But, I always tell people that conservatism is not based upon what your leaders are, or Republicans, I guess we could say, is not based upon just what your leaders are. It's based upon who you are. So that's the whole reason that we decide who we want our nominee to be. A lot of people were, for Mike Cox and for Pete Hoekstra back when Governor Snyder went through his primary. But he was able to win, and you have a constituency now that's rallied around his accomplishments. I think he's articulated them very well, from removing the MBT to economic reform to raising us from 46th in the nation in business to 4th. In a very short period of time. So, in terms of hawking his credentials or his conservative bona fides. The proof's in the pudding of the public policy, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be votes that you're going to have folks that are going to be extremely upset with. He's proven himself not to be a walk the party line, walk the conservative public policy line that many in the grassroots want him to be.
Well, but he was very supportive of the Republican effort during the lame duck session where, so much legislation was passed, some of which, right to work being one, he had said wasn't really on his agenda, but he, stepped up and supported and signed those bills. Do you think he had any reasonable expectation of getting better support from the party on an issue that wasn't a favorite of theirs, like Medicaid expansion?
No, if anything, from his history in business and from, my brief interactions with him and from what I've watched in the press and so on, he's shown himself to be very deliberative in what he does, and it's really not based upon where the wind goes, whether it's right to work or whether it's Medicaid expansion or anything else. He's got big shoulders and he can take it, and he makes he makes
not the nerd he professes to be.
Well, no, I mean, it almost is a nerd. That big shoulder mentality comes along with having a grasp of the knowledge of what's going on, and he has a legacy that he has to be able to go to bed and sleep with, and so he's taken the actions that he feels he's comfortable with.
Now, I want to stick to some of the more local things, but I can't help asking at least this one issue, because it's going to be coming up later in Armchair Politics, but also people will be talking about it a lot come the end of the week, and that's the budget showdown in Washington. Mm-hmm. Republicans passed a measure, a budget, basically in the House of Representatives, adding the provision that defunded Obamacare, which the Senate, led by Democrats, is promising essentially to take that part out. If not, the president will sign that bill.
Sure.
Or veto that bill, rather. Isn't it... I mean, this is what, the 42nd or 43rd attempt to shoot down this legislation. I can't help asking if there aren't bigger fish to fry than to keep relitigating that bill.
Yeah. It's an interesting way that you put it. I was a legislative staffer, both in the majority and in the minority in Lansing. Okay, so I know what it's like to be able to move an agenda, and I know what it's like to sit on the sidelines. Right. And the only way that you're able to accomplish anything when you're in the minority is to be able to do it through amendment. Is to try and add on to bills that the majority already intends to pass. When you hold one chamber, I really take it back to where we are in our political system, in our political dynamic. You have candidates that go through a primary system, and they go out and they meet with the grassroots, and they meet with their local party base, and they meet with people on the doorsteps. And to a person, you'll always hear, even guys like Lieutenant Governor Cherry and State Representative Mueller, they'll meet people that will say, okay, I'm willing to vote for you, but will you hold true to your beliefs? Are you going to stand up for what you believe in and not give in? Are you going to just hold true to your principles? Be that voice for us. And by definition, they always say, yeah. If you were to go out on the steps and they would say, well, no, I'm going to compromise whenever possible. I want to get things done. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the rhetoric that most people want to hear anymore, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. So it's almost kind of created from our electoral system where now you've sent people off to Lansing or you've sent people off to Washington that you've now been elected by, I'm going to hold true to my principles. There's really you've set it up to fail. You've set it up to create gridlock because on the one hand, we're the populace, we're out there watching the newspapers and listening to the radio and watching TV saying, how come these guys can't get anything done? These men and women that we send to Washington, D.C., they don't seem like they're able to get anything done. This is crazy. We need to throw them all out and get new people in. But at the same time, when there's a primary system, we're going to go through and we're going to pick out our conservative or our liberal, our Republican or our Democrat that we're going to say, now this is the one that I want speaking for me. They're going to go out to Washington and they're going to fight. They're going to try and do whatever they can to try and build the America that I want, or build the state of Michigan that I want. And it becomes very frustrating because then you almost pigeonhole your elected officials to not be able to compromise. Folks like Senator Rand Paul, even this past weekend or end of last week, said, listen, it's the law of the land. Obamacare's done. It's done. So,
which is essentially what Governor Snyder has been saying.
Yes. So you have
to, say this is what they're going to do. Michigan ought to be getting the money that comes with that.
Right.
And it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. But at the same time, you have members of not only the Republican Party, but of the Democratic Party, when there's certain issues come about that say, no. This is wrong for our country. It's wrong for our state. And gosh darn it, I want you guys to go out there and fight it every single turn you can. So it's a very careful balance when you have a constituency that's made up of folks that would be traditionally more right-wing or traditionally more moderate. You have folks that want to compromise, folks that just want to absolutely, fight for the America and the Michigan that they want. It's going to be
a flat tax proposal in the House of Representatives that's been dying for decades.
Yeah, but again, it shows the evolution of how grassroots movements are made, because that exact same sentence was said about right to work. It's sat there for 40 years. Come on, that's never going to happen. But you have folks that are for the flat tax. You have folks for the fair tax that keep that hope alive that what we're doing isn't working. So they're going to keep trying to fight to be able to turn minds, to turn attention, to turn, the movers and shakers, if you will, to get their attention on them and say, hey, let's do this. What you're doing isn't working. It's got to change. Luckily, within the state of Michigan, we have a constitutional amendment where we have to have a balanced budget, so we can't run deficits. In Washington, D.C., obviously, that's the big argument. But the hard part about this. Sorry about that. The hard part about this entire thing is that I think it goes back to political philosophy, and I've never beat someone into submission to agree with me. I'm just not a fire and brimstone kind of guy. The Rush Limbaughs and the Ann Coulters of the world, that's entertainment, but it doesn't help advance public policy.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're campaigning or you're legislating, and nary the two shall meet. There's an old joke that says that, a politician goes to heaven and, sees the angels and the wings and all that kind of stuff. And they say, oh, this is nice. They say, well, but before you decide, you got to go to hell first. You got to go check out what's down there and then make your decision. And they go down there and they see golf courses and they see, everybody having drinks, and it looks like a great time. And all of their friends are there, their attorneys and all the legislators and everything. And so they come back and they say, I never thought I'd say this, but I think I want to go there. And they say, okay, you decided. They go back to hell. And now all of a sudden there's fire and there's heat and there's coal and, everybody's working and sweating and they're crying and, it's hell. And they say, well, I don't understand what happened. And they said, well, yesterday we were campaigning. Today you voted for us.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
What you're going to get is promises on one end and you're going to get the reality of it on the other. And you're setting up a system to where you want people to fight for their principles and beliefs at all costs, to represent who they were sent there by. But then you have to compromise in order to get things done, whether it's Washington or Lansing. And it's not a Republican or a Democrat thing. So I don't think that it helps us to insult Democrats or liberals. I don't think that it helps us to get the zingers that, you're going to sit in your garage and give somebody the elbow and say, did you hear what she just said to him?
Right.
Because if it was done the opposite way, and it was done against somebody that I looked up to, I'd be very offended. I'd say, hey, I don't want to become a part of that party. Why would I ever change my vote?
I go back a few years more than you do, and I looked back at a lot of historical speeches and articles and so on, and it seems, while there has always been bitter competition between the parties and so on, the parties themselves have fundamentally changed from an adherence to a core philosophy to positions on particular issues for the purposes of attracting a certain public.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Within, under their umbrella.
It's very well said.
And my parents were of that cloth coat Republican era of the 50s and 40s, 50s, and 60s, the Richard Nixons and others like that were not considered big millionaire types. When did the Republicans become less about the individual and more the party of business?
Well, I don't know that I could necessarily completely agree with the premise of your question, but I would say that there has been a systematic shift within our political class, both not with just the leaders, but with your voting class as well. And we kind of forgot where we came from. Up until the 1940s.
As far as businesses owning elected officials, there's plenty of room to accuse both sides.
Sure.
But for some reason, the Republican rhetoric in recent years has been so much more pro-business and pro-corporation than it is pro-individual rights and freedoms, the way I remember the party philosophy being.
Well, and I think that was it is a state of the times, if you will. What is the major thing that we've had to deal with over the last decade? It's been economic issues. Back it was more apropos, I think, back in the 70s and 80s when you were dealing with the Cold War and, that constant readiness, if you will, of there could be a major superpower war between the United States and Russia and their allies. But in the last decade, it's been about economics. I have a master's degree in Austrian economics. That's kind of my shtick, if you will. That's my thing. And so I've done a lot of reading on this, and it's boom and bust. In the 70s you had the savings, or the 80s you had the savings and loan, boom and bust, and then you went into the 90s of the dot-coms, internet, boom and bust, and then you went into the early 2000s with the real estate, boom and bust. Now you're almost into a government boom, and everybody's wondering when it's going to bust. The economic challenges that we face, you went from a saving from your parents' time, and back in the 70s and 80s, people saved. That's what the focus was on. Now it's on to spending. The credit expansion has just gone crazy over the last 25 years. I mean, people I want to buy now. I want to get it now. I want to be able to get that car now, or get that hot tub, or it's that non-discretionary spending that has just gone through the roof. And so, from a voter standpoint, when you're talking about leaders looking at what people want, they want someone who's going to be able to say, fix business, fix our jobs. We need more jobs here. We need better income. We need to do this. Yes, it's interesting and it's terrible and it's awful that we have these foreign policy things over here. But right now, today, my son is out of work. Or right now, Reagan used to say, when your neighbor's out of work, it's a recession, and when you're out of work, it's a depression.
Right,
You've got a lot of folks that are on the unemployment line that want jobs and they want economic security and they want to make sure that they can take care of their families. And so it's at all costs. Hey, what are you going to do? How are you going to solve this? I don't think that that's a Republican problem per se. It's a Republican and Democrat problem. It's for them to be able to come up with solutions. But I can't really argue with the fact that we've had it hung around our neck that, you guys are just pro-business.
Right.
The only thing that I ever say to that is, what is a business? Whether it's incorporated or whether it's, a sole proprietorship, it's either a person or a collection of people. In the end, a business is not a thing. It's a collection of people. So you're talking about other people. In the environment that we find ourselves in with 401ks, mom and pop are putting their money into a mutual fund. That mutual fund is being grown by the profits of GE and the profits of Ford and the profits of all these corporations. So now they're an investor in that. So if you're going to rail on big, quote unquote, big business, you're really railing on yourself because you're an investor through your 401k of that. So on the one hand, you want it to increase, and on the other hand, you don't want big business to be so big.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that one is offsetting the other when it comes to the comparison between, Al and Frida's hardware store and Home Depot and Lowe's and, the big companies that have driven some of those out of small communities.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, you have unfortunately, there's poster children for all of this stuff. When you bring up economic downturns, I could go back to Richard Nixon, where he wanted to put on wage and price controls and wanted to take us off the gold standard.
And I was never crazy about the gold standard thing, but the price and wage freeze thing actually staved off a recession. It was brilliant, and he didn't have the power to do it, but he used the bully pulpit. Yeah. Probably the last time it was ever used that effectively.
Well, but there's an example. When you have senators or representatives that are out there that quote-unquote front for a big corporation or a big business, that they move legislation that will directly help a certain corporation. Now, if I'm a Democrat, I've got something to point to and say, see, those Republicans, see what they do?
Right.
Very rarely, though, does the actions of a legislator translate into Tom Sumner or Randall Thompson or any other, not to say you're a Republican, but any Republican that's out there. That doesn't necessarily represent me.
By the way, Randall, I've been called worse.
Okay, well, but it doesn't represent the actions of Democratic legislators don't necessarily reflect the Democratic base either.
No, and that's been my point all along. And I can think of at least a couple of issues where they seem upside down on the issues for having gone after certain constituencies by issue, not by core belief.
But I don't think that it's necessarily that recent. I mean, because
no. I'm not saying this happened, under Snyder or Obama or even George W. Bush.
You go back to silver and gold back in the 1900s under William McKinley. I mean, people forget that we were called classical liberals before we were called conservatives. Because there wasn't really a title for it. Russell Kirk, who's from Mecosta,
the original party was the liberal Republicans.
Right. So you have the classical liberal is really a conservative train of thought. And it took Russell Kirk to write A Conservative Mind back in the 1950s in order to be able to trace that from Edmund Burke to T.S. Eliot, to be able to show that there was a train of thought over history and time that from Jerusalem to Athens to Rome to London to Washington, D.C., that there has been a way of thought that represents what was now called conservatism.
Right.
So, unfortunately, your philosophical principles and your foundations don't necessarily always become convenient with the issues of the day or the issues of the time that you're dealing with. So whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're going to find parties or legislators stray from what the foundations and the principles are. And I think that's what you're seeing right now in terms of the Republican Party with the Tea Party saying, okay, we talk about the Constitution. We talk about personal property rights. We talk about, infringement of our personal emails and things like that.
Right.
But where are you guys standing up for making sure it doesn't happen? How come you're not making sure that we enforce the Second Amendment, that we enforce the Fifth Amendment, that we enforce the 10th Amendment? All we can do is advocate from a grassroots standpoint, from a county party standpoint, to say, hey, that's who we are and that's what we believe we should do.
I need to take a short break, Randall, and we'll come back. We'll just have a couple of minutes, but I want to talk some more about the county level and what time we have left. But I have a feeling you and I could do this for a long time. We'll be back with more of our conversation with Genesee County GOP Chair Randall Thompson when we continue.
You're listening to the Tom Sumner Program on Flint's News Talk 1470 WFNT. Old-fashioned radio for a new generation.
Just because it's summer doesn't mean you can't enjoy delicious pasties from King Arthur's. Not only do they have 5 flavors of hot, hearty pasties, but their baked goods are phenomenal. And King Arthur's does specialty cakes for graduations, weddings, birthdays, and more. 2 locations to serve you. At Ballinger and Flushing in Flint, and on Hill Road at Porter in Grand Blanc. Anytime is a good time for King Arthur's pasties. Summertime, cruising your cool ride. Car Hop Service. Hey, you know where I'm talking about. The Flushing A. Ice cold root beer made fresh every day. And there's so much more delicious food to choose from. Burgers, dogs, chicken, even Reubens and wraps. And don't forget the Flushing A sweet treats, like root beer floats, malts, and more. Every third Saturday, it's cruise night. So come out and check out the classic and custom cars from the past. It's a tasty step back in time. The Flushing A on South Cherry Street in downtown Flushing.
Hello? I'm a small business owner. Can somebody help me with my website? I have no idea what you people are saying. What about search engine optimization? Anyone? There was reputation management, social media, mobile media. Hello?
Welcome to Town Square Interactive. Less noise, more solutions. A team of internet pros as dedicated to growing your business as you are. Town Square Interactive. It's like having your own internet team without the payroll. Call 855-4-WEB-HELP. That's 855-4-WEBHELP. Or find us at townsquareinteractive.com. Town Square Interactive. Brilliant.
Now the same web experts that run this station's website are available for Flint and Genesee County business. Call 855-4-WEB-HELP now. That's 855-4-WEB-HELP. Or find us at townsquareinteractive.com.
Over 13 million people are affected by famine, war, and drought in the Horn of Africa. Unfortunately, just listening to this commercial won't help them. Just listening won't give them their next meal, or shelter, or hope. You can help by texting GIVE to 777-444 to donate $10 and by going to usaid.gov/FWD to forward the facts. Brought to you by the Ad Council and USAID. Text donations go directly to Consortium of Humanitarian Relief Organizations. Standard text and data rates apply.
Hey, there he is. How's it going?
I'm having a stroke.
Are you going to shake my hand or what?
I'm having a stroke.
Wow, you're not even moving your arm.
I'm having a stroke.
Are you okay?
I'm having a stroke.
Your face looks weird, too.
I'm having a stroke.
Are you having a seizure or something?
I'm having a stroke.
When someone is having a stroke, they may not be able to say it with words, but their body language will tell you loud and clear.
I'm having a stroke.
You just need to know the sudden signs. Look for FAST, F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. Or S, speech difficulty. Then T, time. Time to call 911 immediately, because the sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in their recovery. Know the sudden signs. Face, arm, speech, time. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Flint's News Talk, 1470. 1470 WFNT Flint. Shop the value connection at WFNT.com. WFNT.com.
Welcome back. This is the Tom Sumner Program. We're live at Alexander J's Armchair Politics coming up in just a little bit, plus a chance to power up with Powerful Talk Radio during the next hour. But we're wrapping things up with my guest. I'm going to say thank you now, because we're only going to have about a minute for you to wrap this up. Randall Thompson, the chair of the GOP, and Randall, I'm happy to have you comment on some of the current races that are going on, but more importantly, I always like to let listeners know where they can find out more about what's going on and keep track. So if you have websites,
I appreciate it very much. We've got the 49th District special election coming up in November. Don Pfeiffer is a great candidate for the Republican Party. I encourage everyone to get out there and try and help Don as much as they can. If you'd like to get more information on Don, you can get a hold of us at our website, GeneseeGOP.org. Again, that's GeneseeGOP.org. Or you can email me directly, chair@GeneseeGOP.org. That'll just forward to my email, and I'll be able to get back to you as quick as I can. But mostly becoming a member of the party is absolutely essential if you want to stay up to date on, whether it's the 49th or, Archie has said that he's not going to seek a re-election in the 7th District, the county commission seat, and so we're going to be looking for candidates out there. Getting involved at the local party level really means you become a member, and you can do that on our website, GeneseeGOP.org, or send me an email, chair@GeneseeGOP.org, and we can hook you up with all the information you need. We have emails that'll be coming out. We have a Facebook page that's almost near 1,000 people now, just in a month and a half, and we're really excited to roll our shirt sleeves up and get get busy with it.
Randall Thompson, thanks again, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Tom. I really enjoyed being here.
News is next. Armchair Politics straight ahead.